Alright, so welcome to the next video. You should have already watched 6D. That was on Roman expansion. Okay, now we're talking 6E here, the decline of the Roman Republic. So this is kind of a interesting topic to discuss. It's also a complicated one, so make sure you're paying attention and be sure to pause the video at any point if you need to kind of take a second to digest the information. Now, just some background on the causes of the decline of the Republic. Okay, so we have an increasing gap between rich people and poor people. Okay, so this leads to a growing discontent. Okay, discontent means anger among the lower classes. Okay, so anytime you see rich and poor, that gap become too big. Okay, so what that means is that the rich people are getting super duper rich. Okay, they have all kinds of money, but all that money is coming at the expense of the poor people who have nothing. Okay, so usually it's a good idea in society to, yes, you have your rich people and you have your poor people, but you also have like a strong middle class who's kind of the bridge between the rich and the poor. So that basically went away. And it was just a lot of super rich people and a lot of super poor people. Okay, this leads to growing anger among the lower classes. Okay, and Rome's kind of all that territory and expansion that they've been doing last video, okay, all the wealth they got, all the territory they got, is going to contribute to this. And we're going to see exactly why here in a second. So, just an example of this unrest. You don't really have to know this, but there's this guy called Spartacus who led like a slave revolution, slave revolt. So he got together like 70, 80,000 slaves, and he like tried to take over Rome, and he brought with him like small farmers and other poor people, and it was a huge mess, disaster. Ultimately, the revolt got put down, but it's a good example of how there's unrest between the lower and the upper classes. Okay, so here we go. Pay attention. Rome's territorial expansion is going to lead to problems. So Rome conquers all sorts of people. Okay, they conquer all sorts of territories, and they bring back many slaves. Okay, so all those territories that they conquered, okay, if you were an army and you lost to Rome in battle, guess what? You're now a Roman slave. Okay, so these slaves will be brought back to the farms where these rich landowners, okay, remember the patricians, okay, and these slaves are going to be used by the rich landowners, okay, in place of the poor workers. So if you're a rich landowner, why would you use a poor worker who you have to pay money when you can just use a slave because slave labor is free? Okay, so these poor workers and small farmers are now out of a job. Okay, and the reason that is, again, why would you pay someone for a job if you don't have to do it? Okay, so the slaves don't have to be paid, so it's much preferable for these landowners to use them instead of paying for the workers. Okay, so that needs to make sense to you right now. Okay, so this would be an example of the Roman farm. Okay, we'd see like a big villa of some sort, okay, surrounding territory here, and then the slaves would work these farms, bringing in crops, bringing in, other items for trade, etc. And the upper class would all get wealthy. So all that work the slaves are doing, the rich people in the villa, those are the guys getting the wealth. So these poor farmers no longer have a job, and they no longer have really anywhere to live or work. So what happens is they move into the city. Okay, so they move into Rome, they'll move into other big cities. And this leads to kind of cities that now have big masses of people that need jobs, that need places to live, and it's just a mess. Okay, so these cities become overcrowded with unemployed poor people who are looking for work. Okay, so again, unemployment, that's a term you hear thrown around a lot. So if you don't know what it means that you don't have a job. So the rise in the use of slaves on farms will lead to the migration of these farmers into the cities, and then these cities becoming overcrowded with people. So this is an example of kind of like a Roman mob. Okay, we see like the Roman architecture here, and we definitely know this is Rome, but these kind of lower class people would get upset. Occasionally they would need food, they would need money, etc., and they would basically just riot for it. Okay, it happened. So another reason that the Republic declined, okay, was because it was having money problems. So it was having problems paying its soldiers, basically. Okay, so the solution was called currency devaluation. Okay, so it's not a good thing. So what this means is, it's a complicated term, but it means that the leaders in the government intentionally decreased the amount of the gold and the silver in each coin. Okay, so that people could now print off more coins and pay more people. So for example, this is a coin, right? Okay, and this is 100% silver. So what they would do, the Romans would take the same amount of silver, so they would take the coin, and they would basically say, well, now we're only going to put 50% silver in here. So this half will be silver, and then we'll put another metal in, and then we'll use that silver to create another coin. Okay, so now we have two coins, but the same amount of silver. So we've made more money for ourselves, but each coin, each money, has less value, so the value goes down. Okay, so this is a complicated topic. We will explain more in class, but okay, they could print off more coins and pay more people, but the money doesn't mean anything. Okay, so this picture, okay, not the time period we're talking about, but it's a great example of just this idea of currency devaluation and inflation. Okay, so this is the percentage of silver in the Roman denarius. That's one of the money terms. So see, 100% silver, that's good. The coin is worth money. Okay, but as time goes on, the money, or the amount of silver, goes down. So the value of the money is decreasing. So that's currency devaluation. Okay, now inflation. Okay, that's going to lead. Inflation means you have a lot of money, but it's not worth anything. Okay, so on your notes where it says what is inflation, okay, this means there's a huge supply of money, but because there's so much of it, the money's not valuable. Alright, so these overseas conquests of Rome, okay, remember we said expansion ended up being a problem, and here's why. They bring back lots of gold and silver, okay, and they're bringing back so much gold and silver that the amount of money in circulation is kind of so great that it's bringing the value of the money down. So they're bringing in lots of money, but they're devaluing the currency while they do it, and this is going to lead to inflation. So this is why you just can't print off money. Okay, so people say, oh, why can't we just print off money? The problem is, if there's so much of it and you're printing it off, then the money doesn't mean anything anymore. Okay? So, if there's less of something, it is more valuable. But if there's more of something, it's less valuable. So take a second to think about that, and that's kind of inflation in a nutshell. So again, this is a complicated economic kind of process. Okay, there's economic, theorists who kind of still don't understand this idea. So make sure you ask a question in class if you're not sure about this. So this is just an example. This actually came from Germany before World War II, but the idea was they were printing off money, and there was a big period of inflation, so look at all this money. That's a whole lot of money, right? Well, the problem is it doesn't mean anything, because if you're just printing off money, then the money has no value. So again, if you're devaluing the currency by taking out the amount of silver, yeah, you have more of it. You have more silver coins, but they don't mean anything anymore because they're not valuable. So, more problems with overexpansion. Okay, as soldiers spend all their time fighting overseas, this is key, they develop loyalty to the generals. Okay, so Caesar's men would be loyal to Caesar. Mark Antony's men would be loyal to Mark Antony. Pompey's men would be loyal to Pompey. Okay, so these soldiers develop loyalty to the generals instead of the state. So the state means just Rome. Instead of like the Roman Republic, they develop loyalty to their generals. This leads to problems because the generals would start using their armies for political reasons. Okay, so they would, try and thwart the Republic by, moving and manipulating their army and threatening people with their huge armies. Okay, so this happens with the guy known as Julius Caesar, who you're going to learn about more in your next video, but he fights a civil war that ultimately leads to the downfall of the Republic. So these kind of soldiers who have developed loyalty to generals instead of the state, okay, these guys fight wars, and they're going to contribute at least to the downfall of the Republic. Alright, so that's your 6E notes. Thanks for watching. So you should have 6D and 6E done. And make sure you ask any questions. Obviously, complicated topic.